Iris are one of our favorite garden plants, and I'm so excited because today we are just south of Stillwater and we are at Mike Bale's backyard, basically, where you have turned a hobby into something fantastic here.
Thanks.
So you've become a hobby hybridizer, right?
That's right.
So you recently retired a few years ago, not necessarily really into iris at that moment, or like, how did this come about?
Well, my grandmother got me interested in iris, and so we were buying her iris for Christmas and things like that in the 80s.
Okay.
And so I had a few here and there, and we'd start out with, we had a little round spot out front, and then it kind of grew, and I got too many iris, so we expanded, and then we came to this area. I just had a few here and there, and I collect them as I could. And then I retired in 2018 from OSU, and that's when things got out of hand. And it's
you had a little
gotten out of
extra
hand.
time, huh?
Yeah, right.
So tell me a little bit about like where you are at now in your hybridizing journey a little bit.
Well, for a while I was just growing, and then I heard people say, hey, what about hybridizing? Have you ever tried that? And so I said no. And so we started, and it was one of those things where it's fairly easy to do, frankly, and so you just cross one iris with the other, and then it's Christmas time when they start coming out, you know, and you see what's going on. But so I'm trying to, I don't have any specific goals right now, other than I am trying to, there's what they call a space age iris, which has got horns and flounces and appendages basically on the end of the beards.
Okay.
And so people seem to really like those right now, and then broken colored ones also. They've got colors all throughout all the petals, and it's just a mishmash. But so those are some things that people are really liking, and so I'm kind of moving toward that.
So you have a lot of different out here to kind of select from, and you're pulling the pollen from one to try to get some of those characteristics.
Right.
Is that basically the gist of it?
That's exactly right.
And in each pod then that you develop, you can get all sorts of combinations of that genetics.
Yeah. And that really is amazing, because I guess it's not any big deal, because in parents, you know, humans,
you never know what the next kid's
yeah, you never know
like,
what's
right?
going to look like. But in iris, it's really amazing, because you'll have a yellow, you'll have a purple, you'll have a mishmash of all colors, of reds, and just all really a blue comes out, and so yeah, it's amazing what kind of colors they are in the same seed pod.
Okay.
They'll just come from two parents, and of course they're getting grandma's genes, and they're getting grandpa's genes, and whatever else. Yeah.
Right, right. So tell me a little bit about like, how did you kind of gear up into this? Who were your community of people that you tapped into for that?
Well, Oklahoma Iris Society is one of the biggest group that I got with, and Hugh Stout. I saw your segment actually several years ago on Hugh Stout and Stout's Gardens at Dancing Tree. Anyway, I got to go into those society meetings and found out that there's a bunch of geeks up there just like me, and so I keep getting more geeky out, and so I have to kind of calm myself when people come out to tour and say, okay, I'm going to let you look now. If you got questions, so it was evolving, you know. It really did evolve, because I liked them, but I didn't realize how much I liked them until I got with other liked people, and they started talking this and that, and go, oh, that's pretty cool.
So you've mainly got bearded iris out here,
yeah.
But you mentioned to me earlier a different group that I'd never really heard of. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
And the arrowbreds are, I think that's what you're talking about. The arrowbreds they're still a bearded iris, but they are basically, they have one parent as a Middle Eastern iris, and so they came from Israel or Iraq or someplace like that, and they are desert iris, and so they don't really grow very well in the United States in most places. Now, Arizona, obviously,
so very drought tolerant.
Yep, very drought tolerant. In fact, they don't like much water in the summertime. They kind of go dormant. But they bred those with the bearded iris, and they get the growing habits, which is really good for a bearded iris. They'll grow about anywhere, in any kind of soil. And they got those growing habits, but they got the neat patterns of the arils. And so so I've really kind of fallen in love with those. And
some of those characteristics of the arils is the kind of the splotch or the eye?
Yeah, they've got a splotch in the fall there, and then they have some striations but they're both on the falls and on the standards.
Okay.
And so those are pretty much standard characteristics of the aril.
Okay. And I noticed a lot of yours are planted in a sandier soil. You got a volleyball court behind you. Is that your next bed you're going to plant in? I see
No.
one iris sneaking in already.
Yeah, there is one that kind of got there by accident, but that's not the plan right now. But I do use it as a source for my sand. That's for the youth group at the church and the kids and so forth. But I do use it, and most of this sand that's in the soil here, I've added to it, amended it.
Okay.
And so it's. Again, they grow fine without it, but they grow better
when they have some good drainage.
With some sand and good drainage. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you kind of just put them on the top of the soil because they don't like to be buried, right? I mean, that's one of the things.
Right. Most of the time, we recommend that they just leave just a little bit of the rhizome showing.
Okay.
In the summer around here, it does get pretty blistering, and so it doesn't hurt to have them just maybe a ½ inch underneath the soil.
Okay.
But you definitely don't plant them like you do tulips, 6 inches down, because they're not going to bloom.
Okay, okay. And you mentioned the youth group that comes out here and joins. Tell us a little bit about how you're passing on what you've learned to the younger group.
Well,
too.
when the kids come out, sometimes the kids will come out with their parents to see this, and they're kind of not really excited about standing around looking at a bunch of flowers. But I say, well, what would you think about hybridizing some and actually coming up with your own flower? And they perk up, you know, and so we have several out here now that just bloomed for the first year, for the teenagers that it came out, and they're pretty excited about their flowers, and so we do that. But that's one of the things that historically the older folks have been the ones that have liked iris, you know, and so forth. But we're trying really hard to get younger people to look at iris, and it's really working because, well, I'm the youth coordinator for our society, but also the region, and so we're trying to think of any way that we can just get people excited. And they've got one at the Science Museum, a garden up there that we've got going for the kids.
Oh, excellent!
It's an educational kind of thing, and so. Anyway,
it takes some patience, right?
It does.
But
it does.
You actually speed up the process slightly.
We do. On hybridizing, you can kind of fake out the iris and the seeds themselves by taking them, soaking them once they've dried out. You soak them, and then it's a striation,
right?
Stratification kind of thing.
Creating that winter experience.
Yep, and make them think it's winter.
Yeah.
And then we leave them in there for about 12 weeks, less for the smaller iris. They germinate faster. They start germinating in the refrigerator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I take them out, put them in cups, just all of one deal in a cup, and then as they get bigger, then we start putting them in their own separate cup.
Excellent.
But you need to separate them because every iris is different, and you just don't.
All those siblings, right?
Yeah, every sibling is going to be a little different.
Yeah, and of course you're keeping accurate records on all the lineage and that sort
that's
of stuff.
the hard part. That's the scientific kind of part, and I'm going, oh my gosh, there's a lot of record keeping. But you measure the flowers, you measure how tall they are, how wide they are, how many buds they have, all that kind of stuff, and it's a process, but it's fun.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And I know we're not the only ones that you like sharing this with. So if somebody wants to come and learn from you, you're open and willing to share this?
Yep, I am. And if they want to be here, have me here when that happens, then they can send me a note and call me or whatever, and they can do that. Or they can come out daylight to dark. The gates are open. Just come on in and look at them and enjoy the flowers.
All right. So you have a Facebook page for people to check out?
We do have,
yeah.
It's under Praise the Lord Iris Gardens, and so they can look that up and find out about us.
All right, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
You bet. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.